Okay, Kristoffer, it's time. I know that you didn't even know that you were going to ask a question, so we've given you a few moments to contemplate. Yes. So, what is your question, please, sir?
Douglas, now you teach us that you want to take your patient's shit with you back home.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have one of those patients where the shits keeps sticking to you still?
Sure. Well, I certainly think over the years that would be, there definitely are people. And I think the way that I've often done it when I'm teaching and we're doing our arm testing for things that make you strong or not, I run through that. And I find for me, it's been less about patience. And it's more been people I've done business with, actually. And it's quite a funny thing because people see this work and they see an opportunity and they see money and they miss the goal of the game is far greater than that. And I've found that on my journey, I've had a lot of people that come in that see that. And recently I was listening to a podcast and somebody used the term of there are missionaries and there are mercenaries. And we're in the business of missionaries. And when the mercenaries come, they're the ones that you open up, you're vulnerable, and then they go, and so I think that's the part I've had to do a lot more work on, is letting go of that, because sometimes what happens is when you get stung in business, when you get in anything, you learn to be careful, you learn not to go there again. And that's not good learning a lot of the time. It's one bad experience doesn't make it enough. And so I think part of that is why it has been so difficult for me to properly step out into the world, and why the way the community is supporting this process at the moment is great, because I ask people to be vulnerable. I ask people to come into our space and do your work, and I have to do that too. And so all of the things like the interviews, I love them. This is just awesome stuff, and chatting with people that are important. But it is amazing. It's when you play back on those things that you've got to overcome. It's like when there's resistance, it's there for a reason. You've got to figure it out. And so I would say that getting better at that side is overcoming those people who've traveled a journey with me, and their stinky poo is still stuck. I found that letting go of clients was quite easy. It was a very important discipline to learn early, and so that very much becomes in sessions is letting go of the expectation of outcome. Yeah. But from expanding into the business world and expanding it is amazing. And I think the challenge of being able to read people quite well is that there's, I often, you'll see when I'm joking and saying, I'm always telling someone what they're thinking. And when they go, how did you know that? I go, oh, well, there's this luminous sign above your head that as you think it, it's written. They're like, what? Now we're joking. But it's like we need to remember something really important, is that 65% of our communication is non-verbal, as in the body. It's entirely the body.
If not more.
Well, the way I heard it the other day was, let's go 65. Then you jump up to top it up at 90% is the tone at which you speak, which is, so that's still non-verbal technically, and 8% is only what you actually said. Yeah. And so because we're in the business of reading bodies, and you know, if you're telling me something and your body's telling me something else, and so the areas in business is and going into areas, it's kind of like going surfing in a place where you know nothing about it. There's lots of hazards in the water, whether that be rocks or sharks or you know, and you're going out there alone, and you know, the honest answer is that's stupid, but at the same time you might have the greatest day of your life. And so I think that everything that I share and everything that I teach, I'm also working hard to overcome resistance, overcome limitations, do things differently, going from being this invisible Doug does not exist, and you know, poof, he pops up and then he's gone again. And suddenly, you know, it's like people open their Facebook or their whatever and they, crap, he's there again. Well, that's what you guys asked for. And that's what I said I would do. And because I couldn't do it alone, I asked Tim to come and help me, and everyone else is helping. And we've got, you know, it's awesome. But it does. So yeah, I can't answer things in straight lines. So that would be that would be my answer. So do you have clients that you can't get rid of their stinky poo?
Actually, no. I think it's kind of similar to your story as well. So clients is pretty easy to leave at the clinic, because again, it's not my problem. It's not my job to fix them. It's my job to help them fix themselves. So that's actually, after your teachings and stuff like that, and that's easy.
Nice.
So it's more in that business kind of way as well, actually. So it's I think the finger's been burned a couple of times that way, and then you know it's a little feels a little risky to go there again, you know. But it's
yeah, it's funny, you know, because generally, like if I'm in a room, I can read the audience, and so when I really screw it up, I really do know, and sometimes I'll do that anyway, and you know that's why I use inappropriate language. I work quite. It certainly appears that I work quite hard to offend at least everybody in the room at least once per hour. As part of a learning process, but like I think it's, you know, there's the world is so different with social medias and things, because anything you put out, it's out there forever, and you know it's I think what I'm slightly diverting, but this is what comes up, but you know, being offended seems to be like a national pastime or an international pastime of people at the moment. But being offended is a choice. And I really, like for me, I really want to stress how important that is. That it's a choice to be offended. It's not, you did this, so I'm that. No, you chose to be offended, and you can also choose not to be offended. But the problem with things like social media is once it's out there, it's out there. And you know, suddenly something which is a throwaway that had no meaning, someone creates a meaning and then makes it something else. And now you're defending something. And so I think in my mind, it's that also has a little bit of scary. I kind of was watching some guy called Jim, and Jim has a cap that says, "Please note, at some point, I will offend you." And he says, "I always wear this cap. Just when someone goes, oh, that's offensive," he goes, "Read the cap." You know? It's like, if I have to work so hard not to offend you, we've already limited our ability to learn and go to the uncomfortable places where the seriously important learning happens. And so I think it's scary, this politically correct world where we actually become so afraid of saying what we think. And it doesn't mean what I think is right, but sometimes I say, hey, this is what I think. And you might go, hey, Doug, that's a bad thing to say. hey, Kristoffer, why is that a bad thing to say? And then you can help me understand what I'm thinking and maybe change the way I see it. But if I'm not even allowed to have that conversation because I may offend someone, I may never ever fully understand what I'm thinking. So I'm getting driven by this stuff I'm holding inside. So I'm never clear on it. And I can never have, because I can't express it, someone can't facilitate a different outcome. You know, and so I think part of helping people in what we do connect with themselves helps them to connect more in with their truth of what they feel, what they believe. It's kind of, but yeah, I think that I can actually feel like the back of my head talking about social media. I can feel that. So I'm doing my work. It's like I can feel like if we tested me now, I'm working hard to keep this. I'm working hard to keep it up, man.
Doing good.
You know, but that's the work. The work is to go into the resistances, to go into the uncomfortable places, not just because you can, but because that's where the growth happens. And
yeah, everyone is just content the whole time. They don't really know what's, you know, good or bad.
Yeah. And
easy peasy. Oh. And there's no, you know, there's nothing exciting about it. You know,
well, the way you say that there are two things that come up. One is that truly living happens in the highs and in the lows. In the middle ground is just existing. That would be part one. Part two is I'm sure that ties back into our Copenhagen or our Denmark study on happiness, where the parameters they were choosing was as long as you never move out of this comfort zone that we are going to choose to define as happiness.
Yeah.
You know, because we've
liver paste, you know, pate. It's just, you know, that's right in the middle. That's just leverpostej. It's awesome. You know.
But think how many people keep coming on workshops, and people who come on workshops for the first time and they say to us, I'm here because I've heard this is a space where I get to feel and express and it's okay. And you kind of go, why wouldn't it be okay? Well, maybe it's just not how we do it here. And actually now I'm just remembering that first workshop, and Glenn was my savior. So because Glenn is ex-South African and has been, more than 20 years in Denmark. And at lunchtime on day one, he came to me and he said, Doug, amazing. You are rocking it. I've never, ever seen a group in Copenhagen be this wild. I'm like, that's not even funny. They're dead. They're not interested. I actually can't reach them. He goes, you just don't understand your population. This, I promise you, even the guys are throwing their underwear at you. They are so... I was like, no, I really thought I'd missed the mark completely. And after lunch, I went back. If you remember, and I went, guys, I give you permission to show me something. And after that, it went kind of wild and beautiful. But it was like there needed to be a permission to express, to feel, to swear, to all of these things. And I hadn't realized, and I think that's for me also what I love about teaching around the world and different languages with translators and different cultures. And it's like, how do we meet people where they're at so we can travel somewhere together, which is a better place than when we started. That's really the goal. But there has to be that point of meeting. And so if Glenn hadn't told me, I would probably not come back for day two. Because for me, from everything I had done, and at that point I'd been training around the world, but you know, Denmark was different. You know, if I was in Finland, it would have been even worse. Apparently, that's what we learned.
Exactly.
But we're still going to do that because
party in the sauna.
So apparently, if we're going to run a program in Finland, it has to be in the sauna, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the only way to get the men to talk.
Yeah, and you know that's it, and they get naked together, you know. Yeah, and then they talk.
Your energies are welcome.
That's the place, you know. We have nothing to hide. Here we go. Now we can talk.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. for our 4-day workshops. Okay, let's organize that. Yeah. No, but I think that's the most amazing thing about all of this, is that we're on a journey. We're all on a journey. It's like, it's when are we going to be there? I have no idea, and hopefully never, because then you stop learning, and if you stop learning, you may as well not exist. But I think that what I'm realizing in the conversations is the importance of helping people to learn, not help people to learn our way of doing things. That's just part of it. But encouraging people to ask better questions, to get curious, to be okay with not knowing what the answer is, to be okay when you're uncomfortable, and something's not working, because there's the opportunity. In that moment is where your opportunity to learn is greatest. But if we spend all of our time trying not to go there because it's uncomfortable, or, you know, what if someone doesn't like me, or, you know, what if someone wants to take some legal action against me? That's, you know, these are all weird realities in the world. It's kind of, it stops learning. It stops that excited part that says there must be a better way. And I think that's the part that I love in all of this, is my brain is wired to say every day, there must be a better way. I'm saying that out loud for the first time, because I'll look at something that we've just come up with, where we're going, like, I'll be patting myself on the back, because, you know, I can do that, and go, wow, look at this amazing thing that I've come up with. This is so cool. And I will go home, and that night I'll go, I wonder if there's a better way to do that. And the answer may be, no, this is pretty good, or there is something else. And so we want to always remain open to possibility that there's a better way. And I may come up with it, you may come up with it. Someone who's not doing this work at all may come up with it. And that's why, in my world, I'm always going and seeing what everybody else is doing, not just in the world of healing, fitness, function. I'm interested in other topics entirely, because sometimes you see an idea there that you can bring back to this, and it changes it. You know, when we talk about root cause analysis, that's an engineering concept, and that was because of having an engineering client and me explaining the 1, 2, 3. He goes, oh, Doug, that's root cause analysis. That makes so much sense. I'm like, yeah, sure. Teach me more. And so I understand the way they think, and actually that's exactly the framework we're doing. And then I go to a business seminar, and there's an amazing guy called Clem Sunter who's who basically looks at outcome models, and he's talking about, you know, the scenario planning, and here's this red flag for this, and you can plan scenarios. And him and one of his MBA students were the only people in the world that 3 months before 9/11 wrote to the US, wrote to the government, and said, based upon our scenarios of what we see happening in the world, this is a likely outcome. It wasn't airplanes crashing into buildings. It was an attack, in a city, possibly nuclear. But these are the scenarios, and this is the likelihood on when. And out of all of the information that they had, they were the only ones doing it because of scenario planning. And so here's Clem Sunter going through this. Now, I love him as well. He's an pretty old guy. When he tells a joke, he's laughing the whole way through because it's so damn funny. So I think I get that from him. I love my own jokes too. But I realize that that's what my brain's doing when I'm listening to someone speak. And I try and share that with people on how we hack stories. But it's scenario planning, you know, when something comes up 3 or 4 times, that's the most likely scenario. At that point, that's when you say to someone on a workshop, or you say to your client, so hang on, if I heard you right, you said this, this, and this, and then you can go, therefore, that, and that. And they look at you and go, oh, how did you know that? And it's actually a straight line. There's no magic in it. It's just, we listened, we took the information, the data. We didn't just write it down and make it dead. We made it alive. It has to fit in. The puzzle pieces must fit. And then suddenly they're like, yes. And there's the, okay, so that's the most likely scenario of what your body's doing, why it's doing this. And now we can drop back to root cause. We can do something there. And this whole scenario can evaporate. Okay, I think I'm going to have to confess to people listening, because I'm talking to Kristoffer, I did have some mushroom coffee this morning because I was feeling grim, and gosh, must have been a year and a half ago in Denmark. We did an experiment. I'd said to the group, I'm about to put lion's mane and chaga into my coffee. Let's see if it makes any difference. And they reckoned that I went on to turbo boost like 4 times faster in my speech. Was something like that, wasn't it?
An hour or so about, of time, but I think that time was probably 2 or 2.5 hours.
It was quite something. So so maybe this is why in answering your question, I dabbled in your question, but almost went everywhere else that I could too.
Like you do.
This is just the way of the world, and I think from me, I thank you for today, for the interview and for the question, and thank you for the fact that we do have conversations like this. And as I was saying to you when we took the quick break, it's today on social media was a picture of the room we do the teaching in and how we set it up, and it takes energy and effort and time to do that. And it's always a privilege to work with you and Glenn and create that space for people to come. So long may we do that whenever we can do that again.
Yes, and thank you for the teachings and coming out as often as you can.
Sweet.